So for the CP exam, there are 2 exams you have to take. It's broken up into 2. But from back in the day, it's much improved. You don't sit for 2 days in a room. You go to a testing center and take a skills exam.
Okay.
And then you go, if you pass the skills exam, you get to go take the knowledge exam, which is the research part. Is that right, Miss Professor?
Actually, it's
The other way around.
You take
Knowledge and then the skills.
The skills is the essay, right?
So do you have to have education and a CP, or if you don't have the education, you can do the CP?
No, the national credential is required.
It is
You have to
required
meet
do
the
this, okay.
education requirement. So the only grandparent clause is the actual education. Like,
Okay.
let's say when you went to paralegal school back in the day, it wasn't ABA approved, or it wasn't an associate's degree, it was a certificate or whatever. But you've worked for 15 years, that experience will trump the, but it's only gonna be available for 3 years. So it's not like people can think now when they're in school, would I rather work and get the experience and then do it, or go to school? Because at some point after the 3 years, that waiver goes away, and so you have to have a 4-year degree or, you know, one of the on the list.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yeah. Who is interested in doing the LPP? Who, and then leave your hand up and put your hand down if you don't meet the education requirement.
I didn't hear the first question.
And the education requirement,
Oh, yeah.
and the education requirement includes the waiver. So if you can waive in,
Want to put your hand down?
if you cannot meet the education waiver, put your hand down.
Do you mean the education or the experience?
Education.
Oh, you mean like?
Okay, everybody put your hand up if you want to do it. If you don't meet the education requirement, put your hand down.
I missed that part.
The education requirement.
So like, you don't have an associate's degree. in
Associate's, bachelor's,
So that
law degree.
includes the waiver. So if you have worked, okay, so,
7 years.
okay. So now put your hand down if you don't have 1,500 hours of paralegal experience.
I have that.
You do? What do you do?
No, I thought you meant like in the field.
No, 1,500 hours of
I said
paralegal experience.
paralegal, period.
Yeah.
Now put your hand down if you don't have a national certification. Okay. And then now put your hand down if you don't have the substantive law experience,
The 500 for family, the 100
the 100 for each. Okay, so that's pretty much where everybody's at. Most of the people are at in this boat. Okay. Interesting.
What about, I read in the rules that we can attend mediations, which scares me to death.
You could attend mediations now. Paralegals can
Oh, I
do
know,
mediations.
But, I mean, what, you advise don't represent clients in court, well, what about mediations?
Do it. Mediation's great.
You could do a mediation right now under Utah law.
Math.
That's true, anybody can do, so just so you know, under Utah law, someone going through a divorce has the right to bring a person, a support person. It could bring their mom, it could bring their neighbor, so it's okay to do that. Now, if you're acting as an LPP, then sure, that person's gonna be relying on you for legal advice, et cetera, et cetera.
Make sure you have it not.
The great thing about a mediation, I mean, I just did this yesterday. I felt like I was in hot water, it was getting confusing, I was scared. I don't know what was happening. I said, we're out of here. You can't dump this information on me, and stormed out of there, it was great.
Okay, one more quick question. When they update those forms on OCAP, etc., will they include language for same-sex marriage divorces?
Yeah.
Pretty sure that they're trying to make all the forms very kind of
Gender
gender
neutral.
neutral. You know, no one's fighting that fight anymore, and keeping the forms clean is in everyone's best interest.
That's why we threw in one of, I don't know if you noticed, but
Yeah.
I have an ex-wife. So that's why we kind of threw that in. It won't matter. It'll be, you can use.
Do you know what the cost will be for the required courses?
We don't have that yet. They're trying to keep it down. I mean, if you think about the steps that they went through to make sure that competent, qualified people will be able to test for this new profession, It's not easy. I mean, as we just went through, there's a lot of requirements. And so even if you have your education already, but you need to get your CP, okay? So now you're gonna have to pay for that. So you're gonna have to pay for study books, you're gonna have to pay for a class, you're gonna have to pay for the exam fees. So there's another fee on top of it. And then you're gonna have to take the required courses. Those are gonna be, they're gonna be a fee. There's gonna be an application fee. There's gonna be an exam fee to take the LPP licensure exam. So you're gonna be investing in this, in
And
this
it's all tax
profession.
deductible. Don't forget that.
Good point.
Yes,
If you were to estimate on what the school fee's gonna be, find out what their hour fee is and multiply it by 3. So if their normal fee is $65 per credit hour,
but it's not gonna be,
that would be, give you a
Yeah.
guestimate. It's not
but
gonna
we
be
should
exact,
know
but it'll
that
be
fairly
65.
soon, and that will be up on the court's website when they're done with the LPP website. And once that's done, I'll send it to the UPA board and the paralegal division board, and we'll post it wherever we can, just so people know that it's available and they can start tracking.
You mentioned that you cannot, I think it was that you can't represent or work with corporations,
Right.
but if it's like an S corp, like a solo, someone's just incorporated, is that just a little bit different than like a
So you
corporation?
could represent somebody that owns, like has a sole proprietorship, but you can't represent the sole proprietorship.
So like with the landlord and eviction stuff, a lot of people will have, if it's the landlord side, they have their properties and stuff in the LLCs or.
And they all have counsel. So I just wrote an article for the Salt Lake County, I don't know when it's gonna go up on their site or whatever, but the court records show from 2017 that 98%, maybe even 99% of petitioners in landlord-tenant cases have counsel.
Now,
And like 9% of respondents had counsel. So that is kind of, I mean, this is how the task force initially picked the 3 practice areas, is where are all the pro se filings?
okay.
And then in divorce, in family law, there's, and it's different on both sides on this one, it's not so heavily petitioner versus respondent. It's like 65% of petitioners versus 44% of respondents are represented or unrepresented. I mean, but it's still, there's a huge gap. And there are other reasons that you can't represent a corporation too, just because it gets into corporate law and corporate, and that's not one of the practice areas. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like if Jim owns a company, but he comes to me and I could represent him as an individual, but I can't represent his company.
You can represent a husband and wife, you know, where they say, come to you and say, we just want you to drop the papers. We can, that scares me. You know?
No, that's-
I don't
No,
like
you would
that.
you'd still represent one, even if it's a settlement, you know, and the other person could be unrepresented, but you wouldn't represent both parties.
I have a couple of questions. One of them is, what are the timelines here? I mean, okay, let me back up for a minute. I've known about this program since its inception, and I have been like, open for 3 years. I have been to every, you know, like where this is the launch date, and then it's like not launched over and over and over again, and I am like, you guys are killing me.
There's never been a launch date. I mean, we've
Yeah.
had projections,
Yeah,
and
the
so
projections and stuff.
and it's kind of, like, most of the rules really have been done for a year. And we've done kind of tweaks, like, we'll be preparing for something and I look at a rule and I'm like, wait, I thought we changed that. And so we do like little tweaks, but it's the curriculum development for the courses have to be based on the exam. So really, you're like, you have to draft an exam, and so you have to know from the steering committee what the LPP, what they want LPPs to be able to know, okay? And then you have to build the curriculum for the class to, and so it's all, so now that's where the time has been. And so now what we think, the exams are actually in good shape, and now the curriculum's being developed for that. So we expect the classes to be available sometime in the spring. And we're gonna wait, the bar will wait to start accepting applications as long as possible that it seems, because that will start the trigger, the waiver date. So they don't wanna start accepting applications too early. Like they wanna make sure that people have had, the first group of people have had time to take the classes. And then, so we anticipate the bar will take applications in the summer. And then it'll be a process of, there's a committee that will have to review your application, verify everything. You have to go through a character and fitness, just like lawyers do. And if there are questions about that, there will be an interview about why did you have this or why is this? And do that interview process, and then once it's approved, you can sit for the exam.
Okay, so we're talking maybe February, March classes may open?
Yep.
Okay. All right, my other question is,
So in 2019, I think we'll have our first practitioners sometime by the end of 2019.
and so, okay, this is for Mr. Hunnicutt. How well realistically are we going to be received? I work for the former executive committee member for family law, and he was, at the beginning of this is a terrible idea. You know, that was a few years ago. I'm just wondering, are attorneys really open to this? Or are they just like, gonna sit back and go, let me see a few of them fail first before, I'm gonna actually sign on to this, or I'm going to get on board, or I'm gonna refer, or I'm gonna accept referrals, or
Sure.
I'm gonna,
So,
how welcome are we gonna be?
you ask 3 lawyers the same question, you get 5 answers. So there's one lawyer here, buddy of mine, and I had a couple of lawyers who were gonna come, but the weather messed them all up, they couldn't make it. So I think it's divided. I shouldn't even use the word divided, I think it's varied. I think there are some who aren't enthusiastic because they view it as competition, but I think it's a small minority. I think most lawyers are, let's see, it's not strongly on their radar. Actually, I think probably the biggest segment is looking at it like this could be a great business opportunity. Let's see how it goes.
So what I have to say about that is, in the beginning, so January 2016, so this is shortly after the task force submitted their report to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court accepted that recommendation and we got started. Nobody really knew, I mean, at first glance, there were a lot of attorneys who were like, no, this is terrible. This is gonna take all my work away. Solo practitioners were upset. New lawyers, associates and law firms were upset. But as they got more education about really what it means, we started getting those kind of comments, fewer each time, and now I hardly ever hear it. And I used to hear it all the time. And we had people come to our meetings, which was great, that would show up to the steering committee meeting and say, I have a concern, I'm concerned about this. But back to the business side of it, that's what I think is exciting, is there's a group of people who don't call law firms.
Exactly.
And I'm gonna need to refer people to lawyers, and so it's a way for lawyers to get work that they would never otherwise get, because it's this person that was intimidated to call a lawyer because they misconceive how much it will cost, or they don't know anybody and so they feel intimidated, but they don't feel intimidated to call somebody called a paralegal practitioner. You see what I'm saying? Then once they're in the door. There are a couple of law firms who are trying to structure how they can set up kind of an LPP group. So they could have maybe hybrid LPPs where we have LPPs, but when you don't have LPP work, you can do regular paralegal work or whatever. So,
Yeah. What are gonna be the rules about advertising, the same as for the attorneys?
yep. But you will have, the LPPs will have the same benefits as the bar. Are any of you a member of the paralegal division of the bar? So you get some of the same benefits the bar does anyway, but the licensed lawyer website, they will have something in there, you know, where it says paralegal practitioner, not a lawyer, but the advertising will be the same.
When it's all done and people are taking the exam and all that, is there gonna be some type of news release or something?
Yeah,
to
that's a
let
good
people
question.
know that this is an option for them now?
Because that is something that will be up to the bar and the courts to do, is to educate the public about it. And so that's one of the forces driving the new website that anybody can look at. It will be a lot of information about what the LPP program is. It won't be just for LPPs, it'll be for the public. But how do we get the word out to the public that this new thing exists? A lot of people liken it to the nurse practitioners that started in the 60s, you know, and the reason that started was in a rural area in Colorado, and there weren't enough doctors. There was one doctor to help all these people, and so a doctor and a nurse got together and decided this would be a good idea, and that's kind of how that started. And that's one of the benefits that we hope will help in Utah too, is in rural communities. Do you know anybody that lives in a rural community where there's just a lack of legal services because of the population, and it might not be viable for a firm to invest in an area, but there are people that need access to justice, and we think LPPs can help that.